Welcome to the Legal Interview Project. The Legal Interview Project is a collection of teens working towards making videos and resources to help other teens who are interested in law find out how to get into law and what branches of law there are. Today I'm joined by Justice Caughey of the Texas First Court of Appeals. It's great to have you.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Just running through, you're a justice at the appellate level. What does your day-to-day work look like? Do you do a lot of reading? Do you do a lot of hearing arguments?
My job is mostly reading and writing. So we have oral arguments once a week, and they don't even happen every single week, but most weeks we have oral arguments, and they are usually 20 minutes aside. And other than that, hour or two once a week, all of my time is reading, writing, and then working with the other judges and attorneys on how to issue the best opinions possible. So I often tell my kids, my son in fifth grade was just saying, I want to be a lawyer and I'm not sure how I feel about writing. I said, well, if you want to be a lawyer, writing is most of what you do, reading and writing. And I love that. It's very different from trial law. My husband's a trial lawyer and he's constantly on calls and on his feet and in court and doing depositions. And um, he does a lot of reading and writing still, but not anywhere near to the same extent of what I do, where really I would say 90% of my time is reading briefs, reading records, researching on Westlaw, reading case after case, um, and uh, and then writing. So yes, a
As
lot
someone
of
who's
reading and
reading
writing.
a ton of briefs, what is your what's your preferred format for the briefs to be written in? So,
Well, the Texas rules are pretty specific about all the different sections you need, but in terms of advice I personally think the table of contents is really, really important. I was an appellate justice and I spent 6 years leading the appellate department of a big law firm. And now I'm back serving as an appellate justice again. And I always said to my team when I was in private practice, you want the table of contents to be something that the judges can read and fully understand. And you can't get all the details, but understand the thrust of your argument just from the table of contents. And I think that's really important. So really strong, clear headings that explain what you're saying. Because when I go back to the briefs and I'm preparing for oral argument, or maybe I've been working on an opinion for a while, then I switch to another opinion and then come back to the opinion. It's really helpful to be able to know exactly where I want to go in the brief. So that and then a really clear, strong introduction matters a lot too. A lot of people don't realize quite how busy our docket is, but as an appellate judge on the First Court of Appeals, I am writing 1 to 2 majority opinions per week, plus getting 2 to 4 from my panel members, where I'm studying the draft opinion, the briefs, the law, the record in depth, and sometimes making significant changes, sometimes writing a concurrence or dissent, and so that's apart from motions to dismiss and all of the original proceedings, mandamus, and other things that come up before us. So, I mean, if you look at that number, that's more than an opinion a day, essentially, for a lot of the year that we're working on. The more you can give us really clear explanations of your position, really clear support in the law, that's really helpful with tying it to your record. And when there's something that's bad for you, don't pretend it away, address it and explain why that case is distinct or why that fact doesn't change anything here, rather than hide the ball because we're going to put the time in, we're going to work hard, we're going to find it. And if you don't have an answer for it, then we're trying to figure out if there's an answer for it. And that's a much worse position for you than if you actually address it head on.
when you're thinking about whether to choose a case for oral argument, what factors are you looking at in the briefs?
That's a really good question. So there is a section on the brief that is supposed to address whether you want oral argument or not. And I really urge you to use that section clearly. If you tell us why your case would benefit from argument. And if you have reasons why, we'll probably grant oral argument. On the other side, if you don't want argument, you shouldn't feel like, regardless of which side you're on, often appellate says I don't want argument and appellant says I do, but in either position, if you don't think that the case would benefit from argument, say that and say why. And we put a lot of credence into what the lawyers tell us for whether the case would benefit from argument or not. And then in terms of the separate factors that we look to, we understand that that argument's a huge part of the process and it gives people their day in court. And so in general, um, I prefer to give argument. I really like argument. On the flip side, I've been in private practice. I've watched argument preps with Zooms and all the moot arguments and everything else cost my clients tens of thousands of dollars at times. And I understand that if it's really not going to advance the ball, that there's not a lot of benefit and can be real harm into putting people through it. So it's really a balancing act for us. And the real question is just, would it aid us in issuing the best opinion we can?
So then within the court, how does the bench, like how do you guys as justices, how do you collaborate, work on different, because it's almost like you're doing a group project every day with writing the opinion, right?
Oh, yes. Okay. Court judges on my own court, there's a ton of interaction.
Yeah.
So, okay, yes. So we have different panels. And this is actually one of my favorite parts about being an appellate judge. You always sit in three judge panels, or occasionally you're en banc, the whole group of nine. And the amazing thing about that is there are two really smart, hardworking people working on every single opinion with you, which really helps alleviate any risk that you miss something. And it really, it's just nice that you get different perspectives and different thoughts and everything else. And so in terms of how we work together, different courts do it differently. Us, I mean, there's just a ton of collaboration in person and on the phone and via email. But then the way it really works in terms of the actual work product is like if one of the cases is assigned to me, I will send a draft opinion to my other two judges, and then the other two judges will study it and potentially put red lines or comments or call me or we'll meet. And then we have conference once a week where we meet to discuss opinions and we'll talk through our different thoughts on them and everything else, and then work together as a team to get the best product we can on all cases. And sometimes that's a really straightforward process, and sometimes it's a really complicated process. I mean, I've had times where I thought I was going to dissent and I wrote a dissent and I circulated it and I was able to persuade the other two that they agreed with my position. And then that actually became the majority and issued not in my name, but in the original. So it's sometimes
Yeah.
a lot more goes on behind the scenes than would meet the eye, but it's amazing to get to work with these other colleagues and to get to learn from them and to get to do everything I can to help make make the opinions for our panel the best we can make them.
Awesome. What's the subject matter like? So is it different groups of three justices have different subjects that they like expertise in? So one group of justices does tax, the other does another thing, or is it really everything?
It's really everything. So I found this very daunting the first time I became an appellate justice, and it's extremely humbling. So our docket is everything. So it ranges from the toughest Fourth Amendment criminal cases to really complex civil cases to, I mean, we have family law, we have probate law, we have speeding ticket appeals. I mean, we have anything that somebody wants to appeal. I mean, now there's the 15th Court of Appeals, which has its own um, carved out jurisdiction where appeals out of the business courts and certain state constitutional challenges and things like that would go there. But otherwise, we hear essentially everything. And no matter how broad your expertise is, I had been a clerk to two different appellate judges in the past and then worked having an extensive appellate practice and private practice. But no matter how broad your experience is, there are still new things that you encounter all the time that you haven't learned. But that's kind of the one of the most fun parts of the job too, is it's always keeping you on your toes, you're always learning. And also, you have these panel members and you have, each of us have two lawyers as on our team that are helping us as well. And in terms of panel, they're randomly assigned. So when we came in, we got randomly assigned for the first, usually it's every 3 months. This year, because there were a lot of new judges, they made it every 4 months. So I have had one panel from January till now. And in September, I switched to a new panel. So I'll be serving with two new judges. And actually, no, sorry, I didn't have one panel from January. I had one panel the first 3 months and a second panel. And then now I'm about to switch to my third panel. And that's a really neat part of the job too, because you see everybody brings different backgrounds, different perspectives, different ways of doing things. Some people really want you to show up with a stack of cases and record sites to talk through. Other people prefer to do it all over email. Different people have different ways of working, and they're all great. So it's
Yeah.
a really amazing part of the job.
Kind of going back in time when you were getting into law school and you were applying for law school first year, did you think that you were going to have an appellate focus? When did you really discover that you wanted to do appellate court?
So I'll come back even further and talk to you about wanting to be a judge, and then I'll talk to you about appellate focus. And that is in high school, neither of my parents practiced law. I really didn't have any close family friends who were lawyers. I didn't have very much exposure to law. And my high school had a program where they would set you up for 3 weeks with an internship with somebody to learn about different fields. And I so happened to get very lucky and was given an internship with Judge Rosenthal, a wonderful federal judge here in Houston in the Southern District of Texas. And I came in really knowing nothing about the law, and I left completely inspired. She worked so hard. She never had a thumb on the scale on either side. Her allegiance was to the law and the rule of law, making sure everyone got their day in court. And I left then and there and said, I want to be a judge one day. And I showed up at Princeton my first day saying, I want to be a judge one day. And it was really my goal since I was, I don't know, 17 years old, um, which is crazy because I remember talking to the first judge I clerked for, and he said, well, you can't just want to be a judge. There's never a direct path, but I'm so happy that it worked out. But in terms of appeals, I had no idea that I was interested in appeals at that stage. I really didn't even know very much about appeals. I went to Harvard Law School. I loved it. I took all sorts of different classes, but I still had no real, I would say, concept. And coming out of law school, I wanted to do a judicial clerkship. And my husband and I got married the summer I graduated. He was a year behind me at Harvard Law School. And I really wanted to clerk for Chief Judge Timkovich of the 10th Circuit. I had read that he was the best mentor in the country, and that is 100% true, although hopefully I can get there one day. But he is just extraordinary and really cares about helping his clerks with their careers and just being an amazing mentor. And he's incredible in terms of his faithfulness to the rule of law and directness in his opinions and so many different things I admire. And so when my husband and I made a plan that I clerk on the Massachusetts Supreme Court the year he finished at Harvard Law School, and then he'd come with me to Denver the next year where his law firm had a Denver office that he could go to that year. So that worked out wonderfully. And in those, so spent 2 years doing state and federal appellate clerkships. And in those two
Is
years,
for undergraduate, were you thinking of going to Princeton for some legal reason, like for some legal career, like something setting up to be a judge, or what were the factors behind going to undergraduate at Princeton and Harvard for law?
um, so as I said, I had a vision that I wanted to be a judge, but I didn't pick Princeton. I mean, there's not like a pre-law program or something at Princeton, and Princeton doesn't have law school. I fell in love with Princeton. I thought it seemed like an amazing, amazing school. But in terms of advice to young people who are interested, I showed up and really expressed my interest in law. So my you could pick the options for a freshman seminar where you got a tiny class with a professor, and I picked one that was a class on law and politics or law and government. And I got to know Professor Eisgruber, who is now the president of Princeton and is still a close friend and mentor of mine. But I deliberately picked that. And then I talked with him about, hey, we need to have some sort of forum for people who are interested in law to meet speakers and get to learn more. So we started the Princeton Law Forum where we had dinners once a month and brought in speakers. And so, I mean, I, I picked Princeton because it was an amazing college in general for me, and I loved it so much. But I went and made opportunities. I would say I chose opportunities to be exposed to law when I could, and then I went and made opportunities like this law forum to really bring in speakers and learn more about different areas of law. And then in terms of Harvard, I again kind of fell in love with the school. I don't know that there's any school that's better or worse for preparing you to be a judge, but I loved Harvard Law School. I had a great experience there. Um, but I had a fantastic experience at both. And coming back to your question before about appeals, I fell in love with appeals in my two appellate clerkships for judges.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll say for people, I know you said you have a lot of friends and students who are interested in appeals. And one tricky thing with appeals is when you show up at a law firm, if you go to a law firm first, or right after judicial clerkship, which a lot of people do, most law firms don't really even offer the opportunity to focus on appeals, perhaps just because the pool of work is much smaller. There's not as much appellate work out there as there is trial work, as there's so many more trials that exist because not every trial goes up on appeal. Um, but I came out of two appellate clerkships. My husband and I first started in DC, and I went to Gibson Dunn there and came out of my two appellate clerkships and said, okay, I definitely want to see appeals. And they had um, a great appellate department there. But I said, I really want to see a trial too, because even if I want to be a great appellate lawyer or appellate judge one day, I need to know how a trial works. If I'm thinking about what happens after, I need to actually understand what happens before. So I spent 2 years running a big trial, seeing through everything with hearings and taking depositions and going to trial and seeing that whole part, um, in addition to really uh, working on appeals. And then I focused on appeals more and more as my career went on. I would recommend trying to get some exposure to trial because it's hard to understand the appeal if you don't understand the trial. And even when I was, for the 6 years, I led a big appellate department where I was focused on appeals. I did some of showing up at trial as the appellate lawyer to preserve issues and preserve error and make legal arguments and do the jury charge and things like that, which are really fun. And it's good uh, to kind of remember that they're all tied together and
Yeah.
have a real understanding of how the process works at all the different levels.
What do you think is the most important book to read now? I guess two books on a societal scale, and for the demographic of people looking to go into law, maybe a appellate focus, maybe not, but I
Oh
guess what
gosh.
two books do you recommend?
Oh gosh, that is really hard. I don't know. Uh, I would say I'm not going to give you books, but I'm going to give you people. I would read Garner and I would read Scalia. Scalia's Matter of Interpretation really, really had a big effect on me and um, thinking about different ways to interpret statutes and contracts and how to be consistent and how to be, um, as a judge, how to faithfully interpret them in a way that people can really read and understand them and they're not surprised at all by what you're doing. The law is predictable and all of that. So I would say um, I'd point you to Scalia's writing and to Garner's writing on writing and particularly the matter of interpretation.
And then I guess as a closing note, what would you say to someone who's like maybe high school, maybe really early in their undergraduate career, who's thinking about law school, thinking about being a judge, maybe going into some high level legal career? What would you think they need to hear? And what would be your word of advice to them?
Well, I have a few. So number one, get as much writing experience as you can because the better the writer you are, the more you'll shine in the legal field. So really try to write as much as you possibly can, number one. Number two, go find good mentors, both in college and law school. I found amazing mentors and not necessarily people who had the same backgrounds that I had or that agreed with me on everything, but just great people who I could go seek out. And then with my clerkships too, people who I could seek out and who could advise me and help me and look at judicial clerkships, look at internships. I love mentoring people. So, and I need interns and uh, try to find people who can help you figure out, navigate your path and um, kind of sort through what's best for you. And then just go for your dreams. I mean, there's always a path as long as you work hard. The judge who I clerked for said to me when I said I want to be a judge, he said, there's no direct path to be a judge, but if you do the very best you can at every different stage of your career, it will work out. And I thought that was such good advice that if you really just do your best, have a great attitude, and shine in all the different phases, then things fall into place and you end up having, who knows, you might end up thinking that something you didn't really expect to love is actually amazing and you love it. But if not, then you're really well positioned with strong supporters backing you to move to whatever you do want to do. And and yeah, and there are pluses and minuses to all sorts of different fields. I mean, leaving private practice to go be a judge again was hard on my family. I had to take a huge pay cut. to work a lot more, but my kids and husband really get it that I get to live the making the world a better place and all these things that are so neat, much more so than in private practice in this role. But but both were great, and I love private practice, and that was great too. So yeah, and I would say anyone who wants advice, just reach out to me. I'm happy to chat and do what I can to help.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.